welcome to this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Today's conversation will be about Jean-Marc Vallée's Dallas Buyers Club. Dallas Buyers Club is an original screenplay by Craig Borton and Melissa Wallach, and it's loosely based on the life of Ron Woodruff, played in this film by Matthew McConaughey, who in 1985, after a seemingly carefree existence, is diagnosed as being HIV positive and is given about 30 days to live. After being dissatisfied with the treatment he gets from the doctors, he tries to take his care into his own hands. And what follows is basically a community that forms along with an equally struggling patient population who both fight for their lives and a fight to live and die without a lot of the stigmas that followed HIV and AIDS in the late 80s and early 90s. Now, bringing in my co-host, when we look at Dallas Buyers Club initially, it's framed by using the mechanism of days illustrating how much time Ron Woodruff has to live. How effective do you think that is as a framing device, and what does it tell you about the larger picture?
Well, I'm first going to start with the micro side of it. I'm going to talk about how it shows the changes in the character. You see, the first 30 days, he goes on a very destructive path, and he kind of looks like he just wasted away, expecting to die soon. But then, by the end of the movie, where it tells you it's been 7,200 days, so well over his initial diagnosis, that how long he had to live, he went on a different path. First of all, he's helped to extend his own life, and he's helped others at the same time. And it does show the difference in the character, but on the bigger picture, it shows the difference that he's been able to make because of his HIV diagnosis.
Yeah, I think as a screenplay, it kind of shows that when you're fighting this disease, every day is important, but not every day is the same. And we kind of, when they stop mentioning it, you kind of understand, okay, he's taking those days and making the most of them. Forming the Buyers Club, helping people, moving to a different location, fighting the FDA. So it less becomes about the 24 hours and more becomes about the bigger things he's doing that can go beyond just one person in one day. It can change basically how a society lives or, in this case, dies humanely. Now, I think if you look at the Buyers Club, Ron doesn't really establish what the Buyers Club is or doesn't have the contacts until he finally breaks that barrier and makes a friendship or makes a partnership with Rayon, a transgender woman played by Jared Leto. I think it's very interesting to see. I think both characters do learn from each other, but who do you think learns more? Is it Ron or Rayon?
I'm going to take the cop-out and say it was equal. I think it's because Ron learns to obviously, like you said, break down the barrier and make connections with the community so they can help other people. But then Rayon learns how he can, even though he is HIV positive, how he can live a better life because of what Ron has teaching him, or so to speak.
Yes, I think so. I think ultimately they learn both each other's strengths and weaknesses. I don't think Ron ever kind of gets through to Rayon in the way he wanted to. Rayon still fights his drug habit and all that leads to it. And Rayon never really, I guess Ron becomes more compassionate, but never to the sense where I think Rayon hopes him to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So this movie, obviously, it does talk about a lot of what people consider to be alternative medicines, at least especially what would be in that time period, where pretty much a lot of the treatments that these HIV positive AIDS patients are taking through the Buyers Club are not approved by the FDA. So do you think the message is that clear cut that there should be that mistrust of what the FDA is telling you and by extension what your doctor is telling you, or is the message still not clear?
I think it paints an interesting picture because basically the most popular drug at the time was AZT, and AZT whether eventually became very effective when it was in lower dosage, but at the early trial stages, it was high doses and it was basically hurting patients more than it was. And then these alternative medicines, which were, an extension of just more of a healing and keeping people, normal things, protein levels, vitamin levels, healthy. But the FDA, considering that alternative, is almost more hesitant. I put it to the sense that the FDA, in many senses, even today, they need to control food and drug just for the fact that people can abuse it. But in many ways, that control hurts innovation. So what Ron Woodruff was doing potentially was innovating drug therapy for these HIV positive and AIDS patients. But for the FDA, you have to have some sort of control. Otherwise, the system breaks, and then you could potentially hurt more, even if you have the best intentions of helping people.
Yeah, I tend to agree because I don't think it was as clear cut as you first assume while watching the movie. Because there are other things that they do mention. There's that scene with Ron and Rayon in the grocery store where he mentions how he's gonna change the way he eats too. So he's really rebooting his entire lifestyle, not just taking different drugs. And they do mention, and even he admits himself, the risks that these new treatments bring. I mean, because he was taking these drugs, it induced a heart attack. So I think it just kind of showed he was taking what he thought to be the lesser evil. And as you can see with the results of the movie and what happened in real life, that's what happened in the end.
Well, yeah, I think everyone was learning at that point, and no one had, figured it out. A lot of this year's Academy recognition for Dallas Buyers Club is pointed towards Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto. Both actors in the past, Jared Leto actually hasn't acted on screen for 5 years until he came back to this role. But both actors who've had moments, but never moments of what we consider brevity or very much dramatic acting. So who were you more impressed by after watching the film? Matthew McConaughey's ability to transform into Rod Woodruff or Jared Leto's ability to become Rayon?
I'm going to go with Jared Leto, just because it seems like Jared Leto was definitely not one of my favorite actors, and probably still isn't, but to be fair, I'm just going to judge him on this performance. He was able to shed any image that he didn't want before. I think a lot of people mentioned before he's famous for being pretty, but I don't think he thought of himself that way. I think he thought of himself as a very serious actor, and you can see that with the roles he took. But obviously those roles didn't turn up how he expected them to be read. But I think this time he didn't really enter the role as a Jared Leto. He entered the role completely different. I mean, if I would just watch the movie randomly flipping through it and just turn it on, I would not know this is Jared Leto unless I went to the IMDb page after. So I think that shows a bit more. That shows some impressive acting on my end.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Jared Leto's always been somebody known for taking risks when he wanted to, whether it be his music career or his TV film work, or whether just being a pretty celebrity. I think it kind of all came together for him. I don't think he did anything significantly different than what he's tried to do in this last 20 years. But this is the first time it really seemed the script, the direction, everything came together, and, people don't look at it as a Jared Leto, being Jared Leto. It looks at Jared Leto finally doing what he does. And in terms of Matthew McConaughey, this is really just that momentum he's built in the last couple of years, whether it be with Mud, whether it be with Magic Mike. It's his turn to being someone who doesn't want to take any role he's offered, but the roles he wants to do. And I think that's one of the most difficult selections in an actor's career, especially one as successful as Matthew McConaughey. It takes definitely a certain level of risk to say, I'm going to stop doing what's made me so super successful and start doing that something I might suck at. So in that sense, it's a risk. But in many ways, I think Ron Woodruff is a perfect Matthew McConaughey character, slimy, cunning, doing all the things that we know Matthew McConaughey can do in a romantic comedy, but just, with the physical transformation, it just seems different, but it maybe not totally different.
Yeah, I think that's why it's good So this movie shows how Matthew McConaughey has matured as an actor, to use a cliche, but it's definitely true. I mean, he's already using what he's done in the past, but he's transitioning it into a new script, a new role with the new physical presence instead.
Yeah, limiting his risk and doing what he's best at with a slightly different physical persona, and people have obviously appreciated it, and Academy has honored him with a leading actor nomination this year. Any other acting roles or standouts that you'd like to touch upon?
It's kind of tough in a movie like this. I mean, other than Ron and Rayon, a lot of other characters changing, except for Jennifer Garner's character of Dr. Eve Sachs.
Yeah, she was a character that obviously her transformation was less obvious in many ways. She was definitely very strict to the book kind of doctor, then became a little more compassionate, and seeing that a lot of things they were doing were hurting. So her transformation, I think, is less obvious, but it's played pretty well by Garner. Garner, someone who's, never had success in, I think, serious approaches, but it's very similar to her characters in a movie like Juno. She doesn't have a lot to do, but in what the time she has, she can portray the empathy and the feeling of loss and sadness.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'm going to credit Garner with is maintaining what you would see from a professional doctor in real life. It felt like that's what her role was in the movie. I mean, a movie that has a lot of like characters with a lot of extravagance to them. She feels like she's able to keep herself grounded at the same time. So I think it kept the movie down to earth. So I'll give credit to Jennifer Garner for that.
One of the more refreshing things about this film, it had a tough time being, and it didn't have a lot of money to be made. So the task went to Jean-Marc Vallée, a Canadian director who's done a lot of French indie films, and this is his first, film being recognized in a big way by Hollywood, is how lean his schedule was, lean his budget was, but he was able to accomplish a lot in that short amount of time. And I think we talked about this previously with 12 Years a Slave, and how a director can take a limited shooting schedule but still get a lot out of it. What were your impressions of Jean-Marc Vallée?
I think two things helped him get the most out of this 25-day shooting schedule. The first one was that it was clear that the actors were already in their role before the cameras even started rolling. So there didn't need to be the rehearsals like they didn't have, they mentioned, and only 15-minute shots. So it helped that having actors that were already prepared and ready to run really helped the movie get moving. And also the fact that John McMurphy also edited the movie, which is just a pseudonym for Jean-Marc Vallée. So it shows that he had top control bottom, because he knew that even after he was finished shooting the movie, he could piece the movie together how he wanted to. And I think that's the way he's able to make the most out of a 25-day shooting schedule.
Absolutely a clear vision, and he's almost does it like a Coen brother, right? They have their pseudonym for their editing. Other technical honors given by the Academy is a Best Makeup nominee.
And that makeup nomination only costs $250, by the way.
Money well spent. We're almost nearing the end of this edition of Inside the Academy Studio, and as always, we like to end with questions. So I ask, what was your favorite moment in Dallas Buyers Club?
I think my favorite moment, it was pretty early in the movie. It's when Ron is at the library and he's reading up all the symptoms of AIDS, and then it just starts to creep up on him that he actually does have the HIV virus and that he's experiencing symptoms of the AIDS symptoms at the same time. So I think we were really able to get into McConaughey's head, what he really wanted you to do, able to connect with the character right throughout that scene and see how much pain he's in because of the realization that he's made.
My favorite moment will be after going to Mexico initially, meeting with that doctor, and then kind of coming up with the scheme of how to get the drugs back over the border. You really see the old McConaughey, the ability to charm and be cunning, and dressing up as a Christian Catholic figure, a father, and getting over the border, it really uses a lot of McConaughey's comedic chops, which I always have felt are very strong. And it definitely provides a little more lightheartedness to a film that touches on very serious topics. Now I ask, what was your least favorite moment?
And on the flip side, my least favorite moment was closer to the end of the movie, where you see Matthew McConaughey's character Ron entering the bull riding competition. I think it just felt a little unnecessary. I think it was just supposed to be it's supposed to be a exclamation mark, a period or whatever that, oh yes, he's a real Texan. Look at him go bull riding. I just thought, I didn't really think of the character as Texan, Missourian, whatever. Like, I thought the character as Ron Woodruff. I didn't really think you needed to show that, yes, he's a true Dallas boy who really likes bull riding at the same time.
Yeah, on a similar vein, I'm going to go with more of the tones of being a lot of his initial friend circle being overtly anti-gay. If you look at more of the comparison on what happened in Ron's real life, the fact that he was more, I guess, compassionate, or he was less vile than he's originally portrayed. I know it works wonders in creating instant, hate towards the character and providing him growth. But to me, at times, it would have been better if it was somebody who saw life in shades of gray instead of black and white, gay or straight. The last thing we like to do is word association. So when you think Dallas Buyers Club, what do you think of?
Protein. Proteins are pretty much his alternative drug treatment, so I'm going to go with protein. So it's a big crux of the movie.
And I'm going to go with hope. So the words that we think of are protein and hope. That is this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Thank you.